Yeah. Yeah.
So moving to our next segment. Now, majority of us have been part of the property game at some point or dabbled in that space at some point in our lives. Everyone dreams of buying the right property at the right time, right place, right price. If only there was a magical formula, we'd all be billionaires, right? Unfortunately, there isn't a magical formula, but what we do have are specialists and experts who really live and breathe the property market and who can really steer us in the right direction. So I'm really pleased to share that Rusty is here to do exactly that. He's very prepared. He's got his screen already up. So I'm going to hand over to Rusty.
No, thank you so much for this opportunity, as well as allowing me to speak on this topic that I'm very much passionate about. So really, interest of time, you can all see my screen there, I'm guessing?
We can.
Awesome, awesome. Let's quickly jump into, so what I'll be talking about, what to consider before buying your next property. Of course, just like any profession, like any financials, it's disclaimer, please do not act just on the basis of this conversation alone. Talk to your financial advisors and whatnot. Let's start with some example. Kyle. Kyle is an accountant. All he had was 140K in equity, 110 in cash. He was struggling because he was working about 60, 70 hours per week and couldn't really get out of that kind of a mindset that, okay, there's no end to it. But once we got caught up, we realized that property investment could be one of those elements for him to consider. And that's what we did. We bought this property in October 2020, just shy of 600,000. All he put from his pocket was 20,000, thanks to the equity in his property. We bought it well. Instead of paying 660, we paid just under 600. So there was a bit of discount when we actually bought it. Fast forward 4 years, the value of the property is $850,000. So he had made just over 250,000 just for taking an action. So this is the story of property investors in general. Again, of course, this is a success story. People go sideways and backwards as well. But imagine this, if Kyle and the likes can buy few properties like this, and now fast forward 15 years, now there's a lot of money coming in as a passive income, the rent they're collecting, they're traveling around, they have, or rather you have money coming in and you are enjoying, things that you really like to do, thanks to the decisions you have made in the past. Just like Kyle, it was a difficult decision for him to buy the property, but once he bought it, he got the fruits in the near future. But of course, this is a long-term strategy, long-term purchasing. Now, of course, you might be thinking if it was all true, everyone will be doing it. And let me put some stats out there. Property investing, as we saw, is very powerful, yet majority of the people fail. So just by looking at some data from ABS, as in Australian Bureau of Statistics, what we have found is that 72% of the property investors have only one investment property. 18% have only two investment properties. Now imagine, while you are talking about Kyle, if he has made so much money on 4 years, about 250K for just taking a decision, he should be doing more and more. But the fact that 90%, as in 72 plus 18, 90% of people get stuck after one or two properties tells us a different story. Because when we start this journey of building wealth through properties, we all want to have a decent portfolio which takes care of itself. And the data says that we need to have 5 or more properties typically for our typical household. Now that is achieved by less than 1% of the property investors who are able to get 5 or more properties. Now the question that we have in front of us, as you would wonder, what is the difference between this average 90% of property investors versus that of first 1% who hold 5 or more properties? So after digging a lot of research and looking at all the data, what we found is there are only two-fold answers to it. One is the strategy, and second, that of due diligence. So my focus today for the next 5 minutes or so is talking about how to go about strategy and due diligence, and maybe leave some thoughts for you to think about. Now, just like everything, we need to plan. I mean, I'll probably start with the strategy. We all need to think and plan. And the biggest tool that we use, the most popular tool that we use on a daily basis is GPS. I'm guessing you all use this tool. It has its own benefits, right? Like we use it. What we do is like we put the end goal where we want to go. It works out where we are. And then all we need to do is put our preferences, our limitations or constraints. Like, do I want to take a toll road? Or do I want to take a scenic route? Do I want to meet someone on the way? It also gives us a live traffic update so that it can reroute accordingly based on our preferences. So what this tool is actually doing is actually helping us to make decisions with confidence, because now we trust the system. Rather than always looking out, winding down our windows and asking around where we need to go, we have a tool in our palm. It is guiding us. It's forgiving. If we make a mistake, it will reroute. Now we all use this tool, I'm assuming. Now my question to you is, if you're using such tool in our daily routine journeys, wouldn't it be nice to have something similar for our financial journey? And that's when we came up with this model called Get Rare model, which stands for RARE, as in R for review, A for aim, R for raise, E for enjoy. Just like anything, we should always start with the end goal in mind. It really is talking about what do we really want to achieve. The likes of Kyle who really want to invest in property, what is the end goal? What is the passive income level that they really want to achieve? And then, of course, we need to start where we are, and that's where the roading starts. Like, we can really work it out, what our numbers are, what our goals are. And then, just like in GPS, we have the limitation and constraints. Here in this journey, we have limitation and constraints like savings plan, because it's a multi-year journey now. Our risk profile, does it allow us to take the risk, the willingness, as well as the tolerance, as well as how much we can borrow? At the end of the day, investing in properties is a game of numbers. It's borrowed money. If we put only 10% to buy a property and we borrow 90%, that's called 90% LVR, and the market goes up by only 10% in the next 2 years, effectively you have just doubled our money. How? We put 10% and the market has gone up by 10%. That's literally doubling our money in next 2 years alone. But by the way, that's a very average number. So how much we can borrow, we need to talk to the likes of IME who can help go to the bank and borrow money. And that's where we really need to be understanding of the fact that what is our constraints, savings plan, risk profile and leverage, and then come with a blueprint just like our GPS is doing. All we have done is just strategically thinking through the whole journey from start to finish with a plan, and then we go and jump into the buying the properties. So effectively, just like we are taking one turn at a time, we're now talking about buying one property at a time to build a portfolio. So effectively, what I'm really saying here is that it's the long-term strategy that should define what type of property we should be buying, what type of budget it should be. Should it be one property of 1.5 million or two properties with that budget, or three properties, as in like three $500,000 properties? What should be the split between cash flow and capital growth? What should be the risk we are taking? What sort of maintenance costs we are talking about? And that really is the cornerstone of the strategy. And then comes the due diligence. When we know exactly what type of property we should be buying, then going and finding the market, what market we should be buying in. Lots of people make a mistake. They try to buy in the backyard. As an example, what I mean is that if you're in Sydney, people feel that they know the market in Sydney and they like to buy in the suburb they are familiar with. But the truth is there are 15,000 plus cities and towns in this country. And yes, we are talking about the long-term investing, but yet it's so cyclical because some markets are going upwards and at the same time, some markets are going downwards. So we really need to be mindful of what type of property we should be buying, and then accordingly buying in the market, which has a favorable supply and demand considerations. And then comes picking that property and then paying the price. Now imagine how an average investor just focus only on the last two elements, what property and what price they are paying. But the reality is, again, going back to what we really want to achieve, it's about building wealth. So it should be starting from the strategy overall. And here there are two elements, the strategy and the due diligence, which differentiates between the average investor of 90% versus that of 1% special or successful property investors. So now how do we go about achieving that? What we're really talking about is, rather than trying to figure out things on our own, we can always ask those who are doing it successfully. And that's where building the right team comes into play. So lots of people think they can buy the property. Of course they can. If they have the right tool, right skills, right experience, they can do it on their own, but they have to have that skills. And that's where a professional help can come into play, We can go and help you with saving your time, stress, even avoiding costly mistakes because stakes are high. And then buying the right property at the right place for the right price will actually make you more money. So it's not really a brainer to think about should really saving the fees make sense or not. Just like we don't think about saving fees going to a right doctor. And with something like this, when we are more holistic about building wealth, it's really is should be considered as your business of investing in properties. So, so three things, if I have to really pinpoint like what we should be looking at before you buy your next property, is to know your numbers, know your goals, what really you're trying to achieve, what is your risk profile, and are you accepting that risk if in case things goes wrong? Yes, there's risk in investing. So we need to be mindful. We need to calculate them upfront. And then we really need to weigh down with the risk of investing versus risk of not investing. Imagine Kyle still working very hard, still getting that kind of money versus when he invested, he made good amount of money passively. Second is have a long-term strategy. Rather than just thinking about buying one property, ask yourself like what happens next. Yes, it will give you some money in your pocket, but is that good enough? Yes, it will make your lifestyle better, but can it really change it? And then third element of it is to build a team. Rather than making more of a reactive scenario, build your team around it, like the likes of wealth strategists, someone who can run through this kind of a model, a financial planner, mortgage broker, solicitors, buyer's agent who can go and execute it. I thought it will be much better for me to run through this as an example. Meet this young family, Shweta and Shailesh, all they had
So
was
Rusty, sorry to interrupt you, but we're actually at time.
sure.
But yeah, I'll give you another 10 seconds to wrap up.
Sure. So they were able to buy 3 properties in 10 months, and the story was published. And this is it. Like I've written a book as well on the same topic. Anyone would like to connect with me, more than happy to go a bit more detail. There's a copy of the book. Anyone put details over there in the property wealth blueprint. Happy to send you the copy of the book as well. So this is me. Sorry, I ran out of time. So happy to answer any questions if I still have some time.
Thank you so much, Rusty. I'm sure there are a lot of people who have questions, and you can definitely connect directly with Rusty straight after the call.